Thank you very much,
All right.
Michelle, Grace, and William. In behalf of our Secretary, Emmanuel Yu, and our newly installed Undersecretary for Cybersecurity, Maria Victoria Castro, we have been working with the group of Ms. Grace and William, the Secure Connect and the Asia Foundation in crafting and drafting the National Cybersecurity Plan 2022. Relative to this one, we have been focusing our efforts still on our key imperatives, which is the protection of the critical information infrastructure, government networks, business and supply chain, and individuals, addressing most, if not all, the recommendations as mentioned by Dr. William earlier, specifically on the development of standards and guidelines for CII and the government, and the capacity building and competency improvement of our staff, including that of our partners in the identified sectors in the governments, which is deemed classified as critical information infrastructure. Just to give some additional inputs also, we have been working with the Office of Transport Security to cover land, sea, and rail relative to the transportation sector, and the Presidential Communications Operations Office for the media sector. So I guess in the meantime, thank you very much again, William, Grace, and Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kaloy, for sharing your valuable insights as head of the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau. Now, I think it's time that we hear from the academe. We have with us Dr. Sherwin Ona of the De La Salle University. Dr. Ona, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear, sir.
Thank you, Michelle. And first of all, congratulations to the team, Secure Connections, for finishing this report. I hope to read your report from from start to end. And of course, thank you for the presentation of Dr. Yu and Miss Grace Santos. Okay, now you can get many lessons from COVID-19, and one of them is even in a public health emergency, no one is exempt from cyber attacks or disruptions caused by these attacks. No? So, and another thing is that looking at current events, world events, at that we can see the ferocity of these threats being operationalized, cyber attacks, and even the weaponization of information. It's quite amazing how state actors can really use all of these tools for their own interests. Now, as an academic, I've always advocated for a lens to interpret this phenomenon. And such a lens is viewing it through the lens of human security, cybersecurity as a non-traditional threat, which is consistent with what Dr. Yu mentioned about the profound effects of these threats to a large segment of the population. Dr. Yu was, I think, spot on when he mentioned that this is not only an organizational or an individual concern, but also societal concern, thus requiring a whole of society response. I believe also that Ms. Santos is correct when she said that when you talk of cybersecurity, policymakers will just tell you now, well, it's not our focus. There are many more important issues besetting the country today, hunger, for instance, and even we're not yet out of the woods in terms of the pandemic. So I believe that policymakers will prioritize that, which is now, a challenge, for us who are advocating for an enhanced posturing in terms of cybersecurity. In my own writings, I don't anymore use cybersecurity, but cyber defense. It's a more active posture in terms of securing the information environment. My question is to both speakers will be, if you are going to talk to a policymaker, how will you convince the policymaker? For instance, how will you explain to a policymaker the issue of prioritizing? If you listen to the presentation and perhaps read the report, there are a lot of suggestions or recommendations, and a policymaker, especially a non-technical policymaker, will be drowned in complexity. No? If you're going to prioritize, what will you prioritize? And another issue that I am putting forward to our speakers is the issue of sustainability. As you know, political cycles in the Philippines are limited, right? We have only a 6-year term for a president, and afterwards we have a new administration coming in, and that entails a change in policy. So how do you now sustain this with the high amount of investment that it would entail? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ona, for your excellent questions and insights. Before I turn you over to the authors to respond to those, we'd like to remind all of our audience to please do take time to answer the poll. If you haven't yet, what should be the next administration's #1 cybersecurity priority? And for those who have questions, please type them into the Q&A box. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So now we'd like to turn you over to the authors, Grace and William, to respond to the questions and comments from the two reactors. Ladies first, Grace, and then we'll go to William.
Thanks, Mimi. Thank you, Director Caloy and Dr. Ona, for your questions and comments. First of all, talking to policymakers, this is definitely a challenge. And over the years, we have experienced how we have been rejected actually by many of these policymakers because, of course, the priority is usually sectoral in nature, the topic at hand when it comes to legislation. But this is actually a great challenge and opportunity. That's why we are building in Secure Connections, a coalition that will bring together people who are not only proponents of cybersecurity, but perhaps also the victims of cybersecurity. Those who are operating, maintaining critical infrastructure, institutions during the COVID-19 pandemic, such as the healthcare institutions, the banks, and those who use fintech. I think an important way of convincing decision makers is to show the damage that cybersecurity incidents can cause. So responding to incidents actually can be much more costly than trying to prevent it, because the damage, it cascades. It's not restricted in one organization, and we've seen this in many instances. In past cyber incidents, such as the SolarWinds incident, and critical infrastructure being compromised in other countries. So showing the economic losses and the damage that cyber incidents can cause, I think, would actually be a good way of convincing decision makers that this can actually happen in the Philippines. William, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Grace. And you do raise a very good point about being rejected in the last few years. And to add to what Dr. Ona mentioned a while ago, we always get that, right? Why spend on cyber when we need more classrooms, or we need more roads, or we need more for people who need it? So it definitely is a challenge. But yes, the first thing that we would do is basically prioritize. That's the reason why the focus of the report is really critical information infrastructure. I think in the whole of government approach and the whole of society approach that we would like to take, we should be protecting everything, but that would be too intimidating, and that would be too large a challenge. So first thing is really focus on critical information security infrastructure. As a matter of fact, we've set the bar so low that we're not saying protect critical information security. We're just saying minimum information security standards for critical information infrastructure. The bar is really, really low. But we still feel that having that bar is an important first step. Right? So that's the first thing. Policy-wise, we must agree that these key critical information infrastructure should be protected. That's one. The second point, that the second most important thing that we'd like to make is, of course, information. That's the reason why CERT and computer emergency response is important. Being able to know that we have a vulnerability here, we've been attacked there was a breach here, there was a breach there, is important as well. And that's the reason why CERT reporting, I think, is number 2. We need to be able to know that we're actually being victims. We actually have to know, because we can't convince policymakers that this is an important problem if we can't quantify the problem. So I think that's number two. We need to be able to know where we are and what the state. And that's the reason why one of our original activities as part, and we're still doing it right now, is actually to do a survey, right? To see what the state of information security is. We started with the public sector, but of course we're hoping to expand that to many sectors as well. And last but not the least is, of course, development, right? Cybersecurity awareness is very important. But as far as we're concerned, we're setting, again, the bar very low. We're just saying that all CII and all public institutions must have cybersecurity professionals. We're not setting a very high bar that says, you have to have cybersecurity awareness training for everybody right away. Right? We're starting with something a little more practical and a little smaller. Now, we understand that it's easier said than done, right? I mean, we're still having trouble filling data privacy officers in all of government, much less a chief information security officer, for example, or a cybersecurity professional. But those are the three things that we probably start with, right? Minimum information security standards, particularly for CII. Incident reporting, a structure and system for incident reporting, which we have in the CERT process. And I believe NCERT is here right now, so that's a good start. And the third is really capability building. And we'll start basically with just having a person that is actually aware of these threats and can focus on that. So I actually start with those three. Thank you.